welcome to Unwarranted Music Opinions, the show in which a bunch of music nerds forcibly make each other listen to whatever music they desire. I'm June Lindbergh here with Brian Courtney. And Chaz Jenkins.
What up?
And back by popular demand, our first ever returning guest, it's Tanner Boyd.
Oh, that's an even bigger honor, guys. Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
Tanner, it's been over a year since you were on the show. And before we talked about the albums today, I just wanted to ask, the records that we talked about on that day, Benji by Some Kill Moon, Clipping Self-Titled, Selected Ambient Works Part 2 by Aphex Twin, and Like Clockwork by Queens of the Stone Age, which was your pick. Have those albums grown or fallen in your estimation? How much do you listen to them still? How's your opinion changed?
I listened to Benji quite a bit there. After I'd listened to that album, I listened to that album for another couple months, but it's kind of fallen out of rotation. I really liked it. The clipping, yeah, I remember it wasn't my thing, but I have shown it to quite a few people who have said that they do like industrial kind of music and stuff, and I'll send that their way and stuff. But no, I'm sitting about the same with everything, and I still hate Aphex Twin.
So we are going to kick things off with your pick, if you'd like to introduce it.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I don't know. I got panicky when trying to pick an album, and I was just trying to think of something. I went with Melophobia by Cage the Elephant, and I hadn't listened to the album before. I'd never listened to a Cage the Elephant album, so there are several Cage the Elephant songs that I like. I love Come a Little Closer and Cigarette Daydreams, and so that was the album this was on. And I figured if the rest of the album sucked, you'd still at least get to listen to those songs. So here we go.
So Cage the Elephant was a band that I and a lot of the people,
especially if you're from Kentucky.
Yes, they are. They're from Bowling Green, in fact.
Shout out to the boys.
I'd say that their biggest claim to fame and
Ain't No
their
Rest
most
for the Wicked
recognizable song is Ain't No Rest for the Wicked. It was in the beginning of Borderlands 2 or Borderlands 1.
Borderlands 1. God.
One of the Borderlands games. A lot of people in my age range, in circa like 2011, when I was a freshman in high school,
love this band.
Cage the Elephant, Black Keys, because both of those bands had new records out.
Arctic
White
Monkeys.
Stripes, Arctic Monkeys, yes. So I still have pretty fond memories for Ain't No Rest for the Wicked, In One Ear, Back Against the Wall.
Oh, I love that song.
Aberdeen was pretty good. I liked Aberdeen. But I remember thinking that they had some great singles, but their albums were kind of inconsistent, and they didn't have any like full through listens that I was super excited about. Melophobia, I think, is pretty easily their best record. I think it's easily their most consistent.
Got them their first Grammy nom too, which is a big deal for a band like that.
I didn't realize it was nominated for a Grammy, except I kind of now remember.
I don't think it won, but it definitely got nominated, I think.
So back in 2013, I did hear this record when it came out, but it didn't leave like too much of a lasting impression on me. I just think I was into other stuff at that time, and I was probably like, Cage the Elephant, that was 2 years ago. I'm listening to the Smiths now. Or
oh, okay. You grew.
Yeah, kind of thing. But now looking back on it, like years later, I've definitely enjoyed it more on this time around, especially sitting down with it. 3 listens, getting to note all of the intricate details. I think this is a really strong record in basically every respect. Songwriting, production, instrumentation. It's upbeat, it's catchy, it's pretty thoughtful as far as the arrangements go. There's something I love to hear in music is where I can like pick out little instrumental flourishes that get more and more detailed on further listens. So I really enjoy this one. What do y'all think?
Well, the thing about Cage the Elephant is that I would consider myself a huge fan of them, but I'm definitely with June where it was always mostly singles. This is the first time I've ever listened to a Cage the Elephant project all the way through. And what a great one to start with, because their first couple albums are kind of wonky from what I've seen, like for an actual album listen. But I mean, you can't go wrong with like their big hits, obviously. This album is super fucking groovy. Holy shit.
Yeah.
The bass work on this thing is amazing. but the guitar work, the drumming, the vocals, awesome too. I love the use of horn on this. The horn is killer on this thing. And what's really interesting is that every track is memorable in some form or fashion. And I think the thing I love the most about this album in particular is how much fun they're having. I just love the, like, take it or leave it. Just the playful nature of the singing and playing throughout the album is super, super duper fun.
Yeah, I thought it was super dancey.
Yeah.
Like, everything flowed really good, and then, like, even, like, come a little closer, it was a little kind of on the heavier end, but it still had the groove and flow going on through the whole thing.
What I mean by, like, the fun factor of the album is that the playing is really tight, but the songwriting is super loose. I don't know if you guys ever caught that, but there's just this looseness to the way the songs flow, but everything is played so consistently well. Production, awesome. Got some grit and punch to it, but it's still kind of clean where you can hear everything in the mix. Love that all the ways. It's a breeze. I guess my biggest issue is that some tracks are just way more stellar than others. I think some tracks, while memorable, just don't quite hit the mark that some of the big tracks on this do. To name some of my favorite tunes, Come a Little Closer, Telescope I really love, It's Just Forever, Take It or Leave It is awesome, Black Widow, Hypocrite Teeth, Cigarette Daydreams.
That's almost every song on the album.
Yeah.
Chad does this a lot.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, Halo, or I don't know if I mentioned Halo, but Spiderhead, it's a decent opener, but that is like my least favorite song on it. Nothing really memorable about that sticks out to me. I just think it's a...
Okay.
What?
Something. It's catchy.
It's okay. Again, it's a good opener, but I mean, Come a Little Closer should have been the opener. That song slaps hard. Such a great punch. Telescope, I think, is my favorite, though, for sure. And Cigarette Daydreams is a great closer. What song uses the horns, though? Is that a...
It's Black Widow, I think.
Yeah, Black Widow, the horns on that are amazing.
Yeah.
There are horns on Teeth, too.
Yeah.
Could be thinking of Teeth.
Well, I'm talking about the big, like, that hits. I think that's Black Widow. The horns and Teeth, though, I remember as well.
That song's crazy.
Yeah, Teeth is...
I couldn't believe that song was on here when I first heard it.
Yeah,
that
Teeth
song
is nuts.
blew me away. I was like, what's happening? Because no other song has really been as crazy as that one. That one's...
They're all pretty out there. Like, some of them get... Oh, we lost Brian.
Fucking genitals. All right.
But yeah, I thought all the songs were pretty wild. Some of them, like, got to the point... There was, like, 3 in the middle there where it felt like a real 60s thing was kind of going on.
Yeah.
And you could tell, because looking in on the behind the scenes, they really wanted to try and get their own sound, not wear their influences on their sleeves. They really wanted to try and come into their own. I think they do. I mean, this songwriting here, the playing, the singing, everything, is just what was on their earlier stuff, just better, way more mature.
It's really... a lot more refined, I think.
Yeah,
just in basically every respect.
Every song, most of the songs get really big. Like, if they don't start big, they pick up dynamically and are like borderline orchestral by the end of them.
If you've listened to Cage the Elephant before, that's nothing new. It's just like Back Against the Wall. That's another song that starts slow but gets really big as the song progresses. Here, though, it's just done so much better. Like, you can really tell that
they... It's really explosive. Like,
yeah.
I don't know how volatile it is on their first few records, but by the time you get to the end of, like, Spiderhead or the end of Teeth, I mean, dude, it's just, like, cacophonous. It's just a massive sound.
One thing I should mention that is, like, for me, part of the entire appeal of Cage the Elephant is just the energy.
Yeah.
Because, like, I saw them live, I think it was in 2014.
For real? That's awesome.
At the Forecastle Festival in Louisville. It was like 93 degrees outside, absolutely sweltering, horribly hot here in Louisville. And lead singer comes walking out and is in like lime green leprechaun-esque suit. And eventually he had to take the suit jacket off because it was just so hot, but he was just dancing around on stage shirtless with his lime green suit pants. I remember that quite vividly because it was just so much energy in the performance. He
had to have been on something, though. I
don't know. It was too hot. It's too hot. I think he was just feeling the music.
It's
I like
crazy to
the
me.
Closer a lot. I think Cigarette Daydreams and Halo
fantastic closer.
Those are great cuts because they're a little more laid back for this album and a little more melancholy. Definitely love the images and the general vibe being portrayed on these tracks, which, you know, I guess would be maybe my complaint is like sometimes it's not like a particularly lyrically complex record, which is not a huge deal or anything, but
yeah, lyrically it's okay. It's something
to get a lot out of it
major.
for that. To get a lot out of it lyrically for a lot of the songs wasn't something that was really happening for me a whole lot. Definitely on Spiderhead, definitely on Halo, definitely on Cigarette Daydream. But honestly, the appeal for me is just the playing, the arrangements. Like it's very rare that an album will catch me for like I could go back to this just to hear the songs being played. I just love how it's arranged. I love that everything's super clear. It's still got this scuzzy feel, even though it is deliberate. Especially with Teeth. I just can't believe that song. That song blew my fucking mind when I heard this album. Like the beginning of it is like whoa, and then that energy remains throughout. How it like uproots you from the album because it's just so different than anything else that's come before it.
Yeah,
and I love that it comes right before Cigarette Daydreams, which is the most.
Whenever it kicks on, like it's just immediately like, oh, it's heavy, man. It's here.
Dude, it's on as soon as it's on. Yeah,
it's just nuts to think that this is a Cage the Elephant album. I think that's the biggest thing here is that you never really would have expected this from this. And I remember when this album came out, it got a lot of mixed reception. And listening to it now, it's like, what was everybody listening to? Because this is awesome. This is
easily their best album.
Yeah.
And they showed potential before this, and they had some really solid songs before this, but this easily is the realization of that potential. Unfortunately,
lately, very meh.
It seems like afterwards, they have 2 more records after this that don't have nearly as solid of a reception. I remember I did hear their 2015 record, which I actually just straight up didn't like, I think.
This is the last album that the guy who had been their lead guitarist up to this point.
Yeah. Probably a change in sound and just a change in, Well, it's a good that this is like their magnum opus so far. I mean, I love Cage the Elephant, and I hate seeing them when they aren't getting a lot of praise, but I just hope that their work just picks up a bit because they're a band that deserves some love. They're one of the few bands like from our state that I really do love seeing. Like at the Grammys, getting Grammy noms and stuff. I think they really deserve it. It's really cool to see that.
To me, I don't know if it's, and I'm not trying to put the album down because I do like it. I don't know if it's like Grammy worthy or whatever. It is a really good rock album. I think it coming out in 2013 is a little, I think it would have done better if it had been released somewhere in the 2000s, like somewhere in that garage rock revival kind of thing.
I agree.
Absolutely destroyed. It would have been heralded in that age.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with Cage the Elephant. They came out at a time when all that stuff was like done with. Like White Stripes were broken up by then. They just came at a time when that stuff wasn't really.
It doesn't hurt my enjoyment that it didn't come out.
It's still great.
It's kind of an observation. I just see that it came out in 2013, and I can maybe see why it flew under some radars or whatever. But I think, there's a lot to like here.
Came out like next to a Killers album or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, what else was 2013? I mean, this is like a year when like
Ragdoll Playground came out in 2013. That was a big deal,
Kieran
was like
Callahan.
Yeah, Death Grip's record was released in 2013. I think Good Kid, Mad City was this year or the year before. So the environment was I don't remember a lot of garage rock kind of getting attention around this time. I think it was just sort of, it just wasn't popular for whatever reason.
It was basically either on the way out or already out.
So, I think this album may have been released a little bit after its time, despite its quality not being hurt by that. I just think its popularity. I think it would have. I mean, if I'm sure this thing still did great. If they're playing festivals, they're doing fine. But I think it would have exploded if this was released in 2004 or something.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
But anyway, it doesn't hurt my enjoyment of it. Just an observation. It definitely seems past its time, but like I said, it doesn't hurt anything about it. Not a lot of bad things to say about it. Not a single song that I hate or don't enjoy. Not a lot of songs that I love a lot. It's just a kick-ass rock record, honestly. It's literally just how I feel about it. When I'm listening to it, I kind of wish we didn't have to talk about it for the show because I just think it's such a kick-ass rock record that anyone could get into.
That's Tanner for you. He just picks kick-ass rock records.
That's kind of why you picked it, and I was like, I have complete faith that this is going to be good. And yeah, it's really good. It's one of the better albums we've listened to for this season of the show for sure. It's just really, I don't know. There's not a lot of bad to say about it. I kind of wish I had more time with it. Even though we did get an extra week this time, I kind of feel that way about every album we did, though. Like, I just wish the only one I got time with was the one I was listening to months ago, my pick, They're just such an excellent crop. this isn't even the tip of the iceberg, really, for this week. So yeah, I'm feeling like a strong 7. It's pretty great. It's a pretty great rock record, honestly.
For me, I'm going to go with a decent 8. I debated if I wanted to go a little higher than that, but I'm glad you mentioned the lyrics, Brian. I think that does bring it down for me. I think lyrically this album is just okay. It does what it does well. The thing you come to this album for is the playing, and that is stellar across the board. Just like I said,
of the lyrics, Tanner.
The lyrics were definitely weak too. I hadn't really paid attention to most of the rest of the album before, so I was just going through track by track and kind of looking at it, and it was all just, that's some rock lyrics. That's
yeah. I was just wondering.
Just decent 8. I love this a lot more than Queens of the Stone Age, so I'm glad you came through for me, Tanner, because this album kicks a lot of ass. But that's my spiel.
Chaz with the bad take. Yeah,
I love me and June. As he said that, was like, he almost made it to the end.
For me, I actually think this is probably one of the better albums that I've heard from 2013.
Your score went up.
A standout indie rock record for the decade. And this last decade didn't exactly have a whole lot of really standout indie rock. Like, obviously, there are going to be some bands that are
like Snail Mail.
Well known. Best one. We got Car Seat Headrest and everything, but it really wasn't a decade for indie rock.
Yeah.
But in a decade that, and we've already mentioned this, feels a little bit behind the times. When you get down to it and you listen to it and you hear the arrangements and the songwriting, it's a really, really fun record. I had a lot of fun picking apart little details, and that's something that I really, really enjoy. So I'm going to give us a light 8.
Nice.
This is really, really solid.
I went into it just knowing Cigarette Daydreams and Come a Little Closer and loving those songs, but then after I'd listened to the whole album a couple times, that didn't change. Those were still my 2 favorite songs, and then everything else sounded great, but there still hasn't been one that's probably ready to enter the regular rotation, So for that, probably gonna give it about a 7 too.
Okay, my pick was the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, the second album ever released by Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is a singer-songwriter, maybe the best of all time, or so it is said by Wikipedia. He's been around since the early 60s. He's still alive somehow.
Still doing it.
And he's still writing music.
Just came out with an album.
There was a 13-minute song about JFK on that album. I haven't heard it. But this is his second album. This is still when he was doing his folk thing. Hadn't gone electric yet. And it's like 50-ish minutes. It's pretty long. Lots of tracks. Lots to digest. Very political. Very thoughtful. Bob Dylan. I mean, it's Bob Dylan, dude. Like, what more do you need?
Yeah, dude, it sucks. It really sucks. It's kind of a shame of how much it actually sucks.
Okay, all right.
Like, I knew some Bob Dylan lyrics before I had ever heard the songs. Like, they just come up in pop culture at some time, and then hearing lines from Blowing in the Wind, and it's like, oh, that's a fucking song? Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's one of those. He's one of those ubiquitous human beings where it's like Bob. You probably don't even know the first time you heard of Bob Dylan, but you heard. You know what I mean? Like, you just know. No one remembers how they heard about him or when.
But you know of him.
Most of the time, I would wait.
Super household name.
Out of time.
Right. He really is just like a ubiquitous human being. Like, everyone just knows his name for some reason. I've just known it, know what kind of music he made, it's somehow you're informed about him having never experienced his music or whatever. And I recently dove into I think just this year I began listening to some of his music just to get it in, it's essential or whatever. And
you really like him.
June likes this album a lot more than some of his other stuff. I think this is your favorite Bob Dylan album, if I'm right.
This is my favorite Bob Dylan record.
And I like this one a lot too. I grew to love it a lot, like a ton. I've only heard 3 of his records, which is Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61 Revisited. And then I didn't really know where to go, so I just went to this one. And I don't know, it's super great. I mean, I don't really understand even the difference between the other two, other than he gets a little more poetic later on. But I feel like at the core, Bob Dylan's just always been doing the same thing as far as these records go. Just always putting a very artful and thoughtful twist on socio-political topics. Even though he would go on to get more personal, this one is definitely more direct than his other records. So I figured it was a good pick because a lot of the stuff that's said here is very on its face, is open to interpretation, but a lot of times he's really just giving you what he thinks.
One of the things that first struck me, like I've I know this record. This was not a new listen for me. I've known this record for a long time, but it's been a little while since I listened to it. And one of the first things that struck me when I was listening to it for the show is just how relevant this thing is.
War never changes.
Decades later, and it's still fucking happening. America.
Every song here, that was written way back in 1963 is still relevant in 2020.
Like Masters of War is a song of nothing but political burns, and it's awesome.
Masters of War is so angry. The closest
it's like the only angry Bob Dylan song I think I've ever heard.
That acoustic guitar riff is the chord progression, awesome.
It's one of his best songs, I think. Masters of War needs to be talked about.
I mean, it's easily one of my favorites off of this album. I don't understand how it wasn't. There are songs on this album that generally get more praise, but that to me was the one that stuck out the most when I first heard it, because it's really the only time I think in my listening experience that I've heard Bob Dylan angry. Normally he's very
pissed, and rightfully so, and he's just going.
They ain't worth the blood that runs in their veins. It's like, yeah, man,
that's a bar. That's a bar.
Big bar.
It really is. Yeah.
So, I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan guy. I've only ever heard one of his albums all the way through, but like you said, Brian, I know exactly who he is. I know the mantra about him. I know the jokes about him. I know the aurora around him.
Why does he sound like that?
Yeah. I've heard all the jokes and memes, and Bob Dylan is just such a household name. So getting to listen to a full another album by him I was really excited about. The thing that really struck me about this album the most, and it's pretty obvious, but still, is the lyrics.
That's what made Bob so huge.
Yeah, well, Bob Dylan...
It wasn't his vocals, it wasn't his guitar playing. While both of those are good, and yes, Bob Dylan's a good vocalist.
Yes, we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a minute. I've got some things to say about that.
That's what he sounds like.
I've got some things to say about that. But my point I'm trying to make is Bob Dylan is just so... When you look at this in a vacuum, it is really good. But Bob Dylan is just such a household name that it's not even about the music, it's just the person, you know what I mean?
I think Bob Dylan's songs are so good that he's allowed to have those vocals. I'm not a fan of the vocals really. He hits the notes and everything, it's all there musically. I just don't like it that much. But the songs are so good, even when you hear it, I'm still holy shit, that is a good song.
Yeah, so this album,
they've become standards. They're that good, they've become standards.
This album is super simple, but incredibly charming. Bob Dylan's charisma is so powerful on this album. And there are so many catchy tunes. And his vocals... It is
very simple.
His vocals are stunning. I love the joke about his vocals, the meme around him, and just how super nasally it is.
Dude, this is his normal vocal. This is before he really...
But he really just gets so much emotion out of these tunes, and it really comes down to his vocals and just how much it feels genuine and his heart is being poured into it. I love artists that go for it regardless of the fact they could go for it, if that makes sense. I praised Andrew WK's vocals on You're Not Alone. You guys kind of clown me for it, but I think his singing on that is awesome, and that's just because he goes for it 100%. And I think that goes the same for Bob Dylan on this record. Brian, you're going to hate me. I think the instrumentation is a little too simple, but I get why it is. I get why it is. It's a backdrop for the lyrics, which are the most important thing here. However, I just think for a 50-minute album and it's nothing but acoustic guitar and that's it with some harmonica from time to time, it really does become noticeable. I don't think it's a good thing. I think there should have been a little bit more variety.
You're looking down the barrel of 1963.
But there was some complex stuff going on in 1963, or some. Jimi Hendrix was coming on the scene.
Not in 63.
Not in 63.
Hendrix wasn't until a good couple years later.
Right.
The whole rock boom popped up in 65 was when the Beatles started.
It was coming though. It was coming, but there wasn't anything. But that doesn't mean people had other instruments besides an acoustic guitar and a harmonica.
I know, but the whole format.
Yeah, recording music is a completely different animal.
in 1963. Bob Dylan invented it in 1965.
I mean,
and was lambasted for it by a large group of people because they saw him.
I mean, we listened to
being overly commercial.
We listened to Patsy Cline, which came out around the same time, and that had way more instrumentation than this.
Right, but this is a folk record.
Yeah,
and
this is not like a
the
country
point
record.
I'm trying to make. If you're going to make a 50-minute album and it's just very one note in the instrumentation department, I'm going to call it out, regardless of when it came out. But I'm not hating on it for that. I'm just pointing it out because I understand why it's like that. Because what you come to a Bob Dylan record for is the lyrics. And lyrically, this album is stellar across the board. There's no weak lyrics on this whole fucking thing. Even on the songs that are like pretty much covers, he just makes them his own. Like the last 2 tracks of the album are covers of other songs. He just completely takes them. Yeah. The closer and the track before that are covers.
If I recall, he takes some liberties with them, but they're more or less covers.
Yeah.
Because I was going to praise him for the boner joke and I shall be free, but I guess somebody else wrote that.
But I do think...
Could have been him. I don't know.
I don't really like how it ends with covers. I think the ending is a little
I've
weak.
never been a huge fan of the last leg. I just feel like it doesn't
hit
nearly.
It doesn't stick the landing. I don't think it sticks the landing.
Talking World War III Blues and Karina Karina are highlights on this album.
They're awesome. They're amazing. It's really just the last 2. It doesn't feel like
I do love Talking
ends.
World War III Blues. Love that fucking track.
Every time the album ends, I'm definitely like, oh, and there it is. You know, like, oh, yeah. I wasn't really expecting.
I can see that. Mm-hmm.
I mean, but Honey, Just Allow Me One More Chance is good, though. But I wish he ended with that instead of I Shall Be Free. And I Shall Be Free is such a weak song to end on. I really wish he would have ended with a different track.
Yeah, I wasn't into like a lot of the couple songs on there that were more just blues songs. Like I think his protest songs like shined a way bit more. And
Oxford Town. Love Oxford Town.
But like Down the Highway, like it's a good blues song, but it was like, I don't know, it just coming off of, Blowing in the Wind. And
Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall. Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall.
It's definitely like, I agree. Even his bluesier cuts on like Highway 61 they're just, look, it's not that they're not good songs. It's not that he's not doing his research and he knows what he's doing topically on these songs. He has a great understanding of and appreciation for and influenced by the blues. But they just pale in comparison to these protest songs. I mean, they're just less visceral. They're just less emotional, less poignant. They just lack everything else that makes the other tracks so great that even though they are maybe great themselves, it doesn't really matter. Even though his vocal performance on Down the Highway is pretty awesome.
This was the first time I'd actually heard the original version of Girl from the North Country. Mm-hmm. I love that song and I play it myself, but the version I heard before was him and Johnny Cash playing it together. So then hearing this, and it was like the guitar in it was a lot more fast, kind of had that more folk pluck thing going on, and it was just a completely different song. I still liked it a lot, but it was just kind of interesting to hear it the way it came out.
The production on this is pretty good for a folk album in the 60s too. I think everything
is pretty clear. Yeah. I want to talk about something that you just kind of mentioned, Tanner, is the guitar style. The closest thing to this that we have talked about on the show musically, I think you all agree it'd be Diamonds in the Rough by John Prine. 100% is the closest comparison to something else we've heard on the show. You know me, I love finger-picked folk guitar. And there are some absolute classic finger-picked melodies and chord progressions. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right has just a beautiful progression.
Oh, that song is amazing.
So that's one of the things that I love the most musically in all music. Like I just adore finger-picked acoustic guitar. It's all over this record. So of course I'm going to love this thing musically. Yeah, the blues songs, while good, maybe aren't as legendary as the rest. But I think they help fill out the album.
That's really what it is. That's maybe the best way you could put it. Like the majority of the track list here is legendary. Like, and what's crazy about that is it's not even hyperbole, because this is maybe the only artist in 100 years that'll be this well known, because it's almost been 100 years and he is this well known.
Yeah,
we're sitting on the guts of 60 years, over half a century. This album was released ago, and we're still talking about it, and it's still crazy poignant, and it's still crazy good.
It's relevant. It's
basically timeless. It's one. There's not a lot of music that is timeless. You go back to the 90s and the 2000s. There's not a lot of timeless music. It's very definitely, most definitely, music of the time.
And you know what?
62.
Yeah, and I will praise the instrumentation for that regard, because while I think it's a little simple in one note, it is timeless. Like, you can never go wrong with an acoustic guitar. What's the one instrument that you always see people pick up and try and play? An acoustic guitar. I mean,
it was the first one. It's rooted in history. Like, I mean, it is such a critical instrument to music.
I think it's a little long, but again, I just wish that some of the songs were just cut. Like the covers, I don't know why they're there when you have such strong political and blues songs for the rest of the album, and for it to end. Like, I feel those songs should have been scrapped. I feel like talking World War III is. I
think it coasts you out, right? Like, it's Karina comes in, and it's kind of just like, okay, here's what we're gonna do for the rest, because you've just gotten through Oxford Town and talking World War III blues.
I don't think it slogs though, because Bob Dylan just keeps me grounded the whole time with his charisma. I mean, goddamn, like, he really has so much charm and character, and it's just him. Nobody else. I mean, that's really hard to do, especially for the '60s. I think, to just have that much presence.
Don't think Twice It's All Right is one of the things that I just love about music in general. One of the big things that drew me into like bluegrass music and stuff is a lot of it sounds like super fast and bright and twangy, but then all the stuff is like about sad shit, like people drowning in the ocean and whatever. And Don't Think Twice It's All Right. I mean, it's so kind of bright and light sounding, and like the subject matter, it isn't even like a relationship that ended badly. It's just like kind of, oh, it didn't work out, but it's like such a bummer of a thing to listen to. But there's just so much going on with that song, and it blew me away.
It's just such one of my favorites way to phrase it too, you know. If I don't think twice, it's all right. I mean, it's all in the song title, but you know what's great about Dylan is he's able to expand upon these ideas in such a way that they're fantastic songs too. Especially with like Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, which to me sounds like Dylan in a few years would have wrote that song, but I'm floored that it's on this one. This is just another legendary song where he you could almost say generically kind of details the adventures of these characters who may be children of a parental figure or just young people going through experiences in life. But just the way he sings about it and his word choices are just so important to illustrate why the song is so artful and so beautiful. Especially how he closes the song with one of the most beautiful lines I think I've ever heard in general, where he'll know what song he's singing before he starts singing, you know, and the line about reflecting it off of the mountainside and sing, you know, just, I mean, it's gorgeous. This is just next. I mean, this is a benchmark album is really the way to put it. This is a benchmark singer-songwriter album. Like this is, and really, I think it's the benchmark, and just like many other of his other records, is the benchmark album because there really just isn't a lot of shit that is this good, frankly. I mean, to this day. I mean, you know, if all music had stopped after this record was released, I wouldn't fucking blame anybody, because what are you supposed to do, you know?
We've been playing Bob Dylan on a loop for 60 years, and I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, it's actually not bad. It's actually not too bad. You know, I don't know. Yeah, it's easy pick for this week, but you know, it's just fantastic.
I think it's a good Dylan pick. I think it's a good. Out of all of his discography, he's had such a
roller coaster of a career.
Such a long discography, and this is one of his better known records. But I think people usually go to Blood on the Tracks.
Highway 61 is a huge one.
I personally love hearing Bob Dylan as just a dude with a harmonica and a guitar singing about the state of the world as he sees it and the issues that he sees in a way that could be released yesterday and still be extremely poignant and relevant. Yeah, so for me, this is a light 9. This is my favorite Bob Dylan record. It's the one I come back to the most. It's the one that instrumentally I connect with the most, because I just love I love the raw, bare bones, finger-picked acoustic stuff. Like, that's just in my blood. You know, as somebody who grew up in Appalachia, like, I just can't get enough of that stuff. So, yeah, this is a fantastic record, but you didn't need us to say it. This is just us.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the wonderful thing.
It's marveling over this in 2020, and you know, getting Chaz, who hasn't heard a full Dylan record or not in a long time, to just experience it, because it's fantastic.
I had a good experience. I don't love it as much as you guys do. I think I'm going to go with a light to decent 8 on this thing. My issues with it do bring it down for me, just because I expected something and I got what I expected, but I didn't expect it in the amount that I got it. A little variety would have really helped me, and I think it ends kind of weak, and it's just a little too long for what it has. But where it shines is lyrically, vocally, the amazing charm and charisma, and the very deceptively good guitar playing that really makes this thing a fucking classic. Bob Dylan's a household name for a reason, and this album just solidifies that. So, good pick, Brian, for real.
I'm going to give it an 8. A lot of legendary stuff on there. I had never listened to a lot of these songs on here before. Like, I'd never listened to Masters of War or Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Like, I'm going to learn to play that one. That's just in the catalog, right off the bat.
It's a great riff. It really is.
Literally just like Capo 3 or Capo 5. It's beautiful. It's so nice.
But yeah, a lot going on. I love it a lot, and it's definitely added a lot to my catalog. So yeah, I'm going to give it a good 8.
Yeah, I think the wonderful thing about Dylan is he just makes it so easy to like him. I mean, there's a huge pressure with a record like this bringing it to the show because it has a reputation. It's loved, and maybe someone is seeking out to hear why it's loved. And I really think you should just go hear it because I think it's really easy to find out, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I said, wonderful thing about Dylan is he makes it easy to just get into his music because it's just so fucking good. So
What do you give it, Brian?
I'd go with like a strong 9 or something. Like it's literally 60-year-old record that's better than if you rounded up 100 albums from the next 5 years, you would find very few that are this good. I mean, even that's like the golden age of music, so to speak, because so much new stuff has come out, new genres are coming out, and then you have this fucking folk record that came out and it just curb stomped all of them, or at least a majority of them. I'm sure there's stuff better, but it's, I just want to speak to this thing's quality because there's really not a lot that is this good and this old and this, and has stood the test of time. Sometimes you're listening to something that's kind of like a period piece, but this is a period piece every single year it's been out since its release.
For real, yeah. So
Jazz literally just like got abducted by aliens.
So the album I picked is the 1994 classic, sludge metal classic, When the Kite String Pops by Acid Bath. Now, I know what you're all thinking. How the fuck did Chaz pick this? Because I'm sure everybody who's listening to this and you guys are scratching your head wondering why the fuck would this even come into my rotation. It's kind of a funny story how experiencing this album was. So I kind of knew about it for a while because that album cover is so iconic for many different reasons. I just kind of had it in my head for a while, and then I finally just discovered it on Rim one day. Album cover, name, everything. And I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool, and I kind of wanted to get some more metal on the show. So I listened to a few tracks, was floored by Tranquilized. Floored by that fucking song. And when we were moving up to Hazard, I listened to the whole album in full. And
you had someone in the car with you, didn't you?
No, it was by myself. And I just listened to it.
God.
Now, keep in mind, none of the lyrics were really sticking out to me. I was mainly taking in the music, and I loved the music. Well, then I had to listen to it legitimately for the show. And when I finally figured out what most of the lyrical content on this thing was, well, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And I almost regretted picking it, but it's too late now. I like this thing actually a lot, but it's mainly because of the music. This will be very interesting. What'd you guys think?
So I know. Oh, you go first, Brian.
It's pretty good. It's maybe the most disgusting album I think I've ever heard. I think this is actually the most disgusting album I've ever heard up to this point. I'm not very versed in sludge metal. This is a great starting point. I'm appalled, frankly, but it sounds so badass and disgusting and like just it's so fucked out. Like I don't know how else to put it. It's so intense right from the start. The vocals are just between like screeching and like these really kind of gothic performances. There is like no letting up. The riffs are super heavy and just like, I mean, they really do sound sludgy. Like there's really no other way to put it. Like they actually sound like toxic sludge. I don't really know what else to say. Just the way these guitars sound is really disgusting. And it sounds cliche, but I've never been exposed to this before. So this is like, I mean, this is like a genuine reaction for you. Like, I don't have there's no pre-built hype to this. I'm not aware of this. You know, I'm aware of the genre, but I didn't know what it sounded like. I never heard any of it. I didn't think it sounded like this at all. This is such like a wonderful fusion of like the best elements of 4 different kinds of metal.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
There's definitely the thrash influence in there. That's
Some
really
death
awesome.
in there.
There's also like doom metal, just like when these super big riffs, but they don't let them ride out. They are contained, which kind of makes me like them more than I do in some of the doom metal I've enjoyed. Okay,
some death metal in it.
So Elephant in the Room.
The lyrical content.
The lyrical content and I think the artistic inspiration for this album. So the cover of this album is a lovely little clown, so you would think, with a little red balloon that says "I'm Pogo," and signed in the bottom right it says J.W. Gacy. Now that could be anybody, but it's actually famed serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who had the clown alter ego Pogo. And John Wayne Gacy did some very bad things to some very young people. And he's on the cover of this album. And a lot of the lyrical content is really not too far off of a description of
it's not a concept album.
Basically these horrible acts. They're not condoning or, you know, this is artistic license. They're taking this aesthetic or they're taking this killer and basically making it
like it's not
aesthetic.
A concept album, but a lot of the lyrical content is inspired by the
it's
persona.
Gruesome. It is nothing short of gruesome.
It's very.
It's really, and it is an aesthetic. Like, I know that you all, for me, I'm surprised that you all are so like, oh my God. And then I realized like, oh, I had a grindcore phase like earlier this year, and I've listened to some death metal. I've listened to some brutal death. I've listened to napalm. Like
this is like first contact.
I'm not a huge,
me too.
like metalhead or anything, but I've fairly recently like gotten to the point where I'm capable of enjoying more extreme forms of metal. I think mostly just because I switched from headphones to speakers for most of my listening, and just having it all cacophony around you helped me enjoy it some more. I think the lyrics here, I don't want to say par for the course, but they kind of are when it comes to like some, like not all, but a lot of metal, more extreme forms of metal anyway.
And we're not talking like metal like Metallica or Megadeth, you know,
right.
The classic metal from the 80s.
There's a lot of death metal influence here.
One of my friends was really into the band Cannibal Corpse, and so I wasn't shocked, by the lyrics, but it just seems like, oh, that's gross.
Yes, there's a lot of death metal influence here, both in the lyrics. I think a lot in the lyrics, and in the music itself. There are a lot of very death metal-esque sort of breakdowns that will happen in the songs. This just blast beat riffing going on every now and then. A lot of the album, there's quite a bit of dynamic contrast here.
Mm-hmm. There's even a few acoustic breakdowns, which are really pleasant and a good.
They're strategically placed in the middle and then right before the final track.
Yeah,
which is in the 2 track. I think it's "Scream of the Butterfly" and "The Bones of Baby Dolls." I know is the other one. Mm-hmm. Those are great. Those are great in terms of placement and in terms of just the songs are great.
See, Chaz, I actually was surprised with this record simply because back when we reviewed Dark Throne, which is a black metal record and sounds nothing like this, that you mentioned death metal as a genre that you just had no interest in and thought was just a bunch of pretentious bullshit, essentially.
Right.
And after hearing this, it's not a death metal record, but there's definitely elements of death metal here.
Right. And I do like the elements utilized here, but the core genre is sludge metal, which I'm a huge fan of because yeah.
But the way I'm saying this is, it makes me just wonder, like, what death metal were people showing you? Like, the people that you were friends with who were fans of death metal?
I couldn't tell you because it was in one ear out the other, so I couldn't tell you. But
I think that if you got into the right bands...
Well, hey, that's what the show's for. That's what the show's for.
Like some early 90s death metal, I think you might be able to enjoy it, honestly.
We need to get Corey on the show, is what I'm hearing. Just got to get him on the show again.
He's going to make us listen to melodic tech death. I don't want to do that.
So, my opinion of the lyrics is very...
Jazz, you just tread careful.
I know. It's very split down the middle. On the one hand, a lot of the shit does make me incredibly uncomfortable to the point where, like, do I even really want to listen to this again? But I think when you read them, there's some actual poeticness to it, the way it's delivered and written, because it does feel edgy, but it doesn't feel edgy to the point where it feels disingenuous.
Yeah,
I think so the lyrics are meant to be as uncomfortable as they are, because when you see the album cover, you hear the music and you hear the lyrics associated with the music, it creates this whole, as we mentioned, aesthetic that you're probably going to be uncomfortable by, but I think that's the point. I feel like if I were to go to this album and expect like some happy shit, I would be very,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, I mean, it's not really
I think the lyrical content
from
fits.
how...
Yeah, I think the lyrical content fits what they were going for. And there are some points where it's genuinely very poetic and disturbing, but like I'm kind of happy that I'm being disturbed because it's part of the experience. There are some moments where it goes a little too far, where I'm like, okay, this isn't fun. Like, but there are some moments where I'm like, I'm kind of into this, and I like it's like watching a horror movie.
Oh fucking Christ! Don't say I'm kind of into this. Don't use that phrasing.
Well, it's like watching a gory horror film. You know what I mean? It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like obviously I'm not
kind of into this.
Like obviously
no, you might be. You might.
Like obviously I'm not rooting for the killer and I'm like happy that these people are getting killed, but I'm like enjoying the
some
thrill.
Horror movies I'm glad I am.
It's when you watch a horror movie and you judge it on how gory and crazy the kills are.
Yeah, so like the lyrical content does go balls to the walls, but I mean I still think Shoo Shoo takes the cake for most disturbing lyrics.
Because Shoo Shoo's real. I mean this is real.
Yeah, this is very much like,
but obviously this shit isn't based on this shit isn't
it's not
based
trauma.
on any, yeah.
Like that they've endured. It's not like I'm taking my trauma and putting on display. This is like, look at this horrible, disgusting thing, and we're gonna use this black curtain backdrop. You know, that's very much what it is to me. It's not posturing or anything like that, but it's definitely like bringing disgusting things. And I don't know, just sort of like giving them a musical style. Like I don't really know, but it's such a strange little.
Most of the time, I'm getting raptured into the disturbing lyrical content, but there are a few times where it takes me out with just how balls to the walls it goes.
Honestly, I never ever feel like this thing goes too far. I feel like it goes just far enough, honestly, because like it's really fucked up. I mean, it's completely fucked. But honestly, I think that they just do it so well and give you an insight as it's something in the songwriting lets you know that like they're not into this. This is just their artistic license with it. And to me, once I felt like I understood that, once I felt like, you know, because there is kind of a level of like, okay, it's extreme metal. Are they bad people? But it doesn't really seem that way. So once you kind of get over that hill, it's kind of like, okay, well, to me, it's like, okay, well, how far can you take this?
I think they take it pretty far, especially with the closer.
They go about as far as you could go, honestly.
I mean, the closer, the sampling of Clockwork Orange is beautifully used, but man, is it a tough listen through that closer.
It's intense. It's such a, and that's really how the whole album is. It's just such an intense, violent listen.
But it's an experience, and it's like one that I find myself wanting to go on more than Dark Throne, I think.
It's just like, yeah, there's something about this record that just drew me into it right from the beginning. And honestly, getting away from like the lyrical content and like, you know, whatever.
The actual music here is fucking awesome.
The performances are actually kind of amazing here. I am kind of stunned by how good of a vocalist, I think his name is Dax is. He's fantastic. He has such great range. The screams, the growling sounds great. He has this great gothic delivery on some of the more low-key track, or just some of the moments where he
gets pretty melodic too, and it's really nice. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's talk about some of the songs, I guess, real quick.
Well, Tanner, what do you think?
I'm very neutral on this album. Like, I'm just kind of here, and it's like, yeah, this is some heavy metal. It sure is. Well, you know, and that I don't know. I just not really feeling it.
Damn it!
Like this tier of metal. I like probably like harder rock or like some light metal like Metallica and that kind of stuff. And
that's mostly what I'm into as well. But I was pretty floored just by the instrumentation here. Like, it's pretty damn good. I mean, like I said, the second track really floored me.
Such a great opener, man.
When the tempo changes on the opener, that's when the album sells you. When it starts suddenly faster, that's it. Like,
then you go into Tranquilize, another great song. Cheap Vodka is like maybe the most punk song on. It's just such a just 2 minutes, just bam, bam, bam. Because the songs in here are long, are like 5 or 6 minutes.
And it's a 70-minute.
Of them, they have long. It's only 14 tracks too. They really take their time with these songs and push them to the. But I don't know, they just really do it fantastically. Honestly, I have very little complaints. I love What Color Is Death. I love Scream of the Butterfly, Bones of the Baby Dolls. Talked about those earlier. Closer is manic, insane finger paintings. Another great one.
Dr. Seuss's
my
Dead
favorite is probably Dr. Seuss's Dead. That's runaway favorite. It's such a fantastic. It kind of stands away from the rest of the album.
Yeah, because the lyrical content of that is legitimately
in of itself.
Yeah,
honestly,
the lyrical content on Dr. Seuss's Dead is legitimately awesome. I love the lyrics on that song.
Because it's not so much about Dr. Seuss being dead. It's
a metaphor. The idea that the creativity in life is gone because, oh man, it's just such a
of these. I don't know if it's because of the awful things or if they're singing about these awful things because they feel like there's nothing left. I don't really know. It's just, but they're, I think it sort of is the closest to explaining why the record is the way it is.
Yeah,
it's on the album.
It's a good thesis statement. It's a good thesis statement for the record, I think. And
then the next song's like Killing a Corpse or something. I don't know.
Stick to Megadeth or Metallica or Judas Priest. Stick to that stuff if that's the metal that you gravitate towards more. Sorry, Tanner.
Yeah, it's nuts. I don't know. I feel like I've said everything I have to say. You're crazy.
So I have a couple of criticisms. I don't love this record the way that I think Brian and Chaz do.
Big boo.
Finally, Chaz, we agree on something.
It's about time.
I think it's very good.
It's going to change, though.
That I like quite a bit. However, there are some tracks, especially on the cast, that just kind of go by.
I think that's the consensus too, but I think this really What Color Is Death is not necessarily a favorite song on this thing. I think that song's awesome. It's not my
I think
favorite.
That there is a great deal of this 70-minute record that is taken up by this mid-tempo riffing. And while I like it, a lot of the riffs that are there, while good and sometimes great, they're not all mind-blowing. And when they go on for so long, the album starts to drag a bit. I think the album does drag a bit.
Yes, it does slog just a smidge. Oh, yeah.
I think that the vocalist, while he's good, I actually prefer the screamed vocals to the clean vocals on this thing.
That doesn't.
The clean vocals are fine, but they're just not really my style. I don't care too much. It kind of sounds like a discount.
Well, it sounds like what would inspire. Right? It sounds like what would inspire new metal vocals.
It sounds like the dude from Queens of the Stone Age, Tanner, a little, right? Did you get that at all?
No,
I didn't get that either.
It kind of sounds kind of reminds me of Queens of the Stone Age.
You're on your own on that one.
Everyone hung out to dry. She asked only Tanner. Everyone else, no.
Scream of the Butterfly is one of the more renowned songs.
That was definitely my favorite song, was Scream of the Butterfly.
That's actually not one of my favorites. I don't like it as much as some of the other ones. My favorites are probably The Blue, Tranquilized, Jezebel. Dr. Seuss's Dead is really, really good. And I do think
the back half, this is good.
Samples is really, really good too.
This is good because the back half could grow on you in 2 years or something. This is good.
The lyrics, for me, yeah, they're intense. Yes, they're dark, but I've already heard
pedestrian.
I've already heard Napalm Death and shit. I've already listened to some ridiculous, gory metal music.
I'm a fan of Slayer, but I still think this album really does bring
Slayer's
some punch
not death
in.
Metal.
Slayer is not.
Slayer's got nothing on this shit. Slayer doesn't even have anything on
One of their songs is called Raining Blood. I mean, that's pretty...
I know.
Fuck the corpse, Chaz. Do you not know the difference between...
I mean, yeah, but that's my point.
Well, they sang about it. They didn't do it.
You should see grindcore and death grind. All of these
ridiculous genres.
Which are ridiculous, yeah. But anyway, the lyrics didn't really bother me, but they didn't really make me scared or amplify the tension. For me, when I loved this record, it was when things got sped up just a little bit and just the intensity of the instrumentation and the playing. Yeah, this was a really enjoyable listen for me, but it's not a metal record that I think I'm going to be coming back to that much when I want to listen to the genre. I typically prefer stuff that's a little more concise, a little more straight up, just fuck you to pieces bead.
Whoa.
Like I really like, I love punk music, so it's not that crazy that the kind of metal that I would prefer would typically be like, what the hell is happening right now? But saying that, I also like atmospheric black metal, so I have no idea what my metal taste is.
This will probably grow on you. I think Brian's right. I feel like this really could grow on you.
I think the back half has potential to grow on you because it is a lot of material. I mean, they basically beat this idea to death fittingly by the end of the album. They really have done. It's amazing to me that they came out with another album because I feel like this is it, right? Like, I mean, you already brutalized all these people, fictionally speaking. It is a crazy. I enjoyed it a lot, Chaz. I think it sounds great. I think the vocalist is great. The mid-tempo riffing thing, that's a good point. I think it works to space out the songs for me. Didn't really detract in any way.
For me, amazing riffs, super sludgy and infectiously catchy. A lot of headbanging material here, which is what metal is all about. The production on this thing, the bass is so fucking good.
I can't tell if this thing it doesn't like sound low fidelity. I don't know where they recorded this, but it does sound really good. I don't know. Yeah, it's like.
You're totally right though, June. It does slog, and I hate to say that, but it does kind of slog. I've already talked my spiel about the lyrics. I really am surprised that the vocals didn't annoy me. That was my biggest fear because June, as I mentioned with death metal, I think the vocals can get a little annoying for me, but I think the blend of melodic, the screaming, the growling, it never becomes too one note for me or repetitive. I think how this album is packaged and put together really keeps things fresh for the 70-minute runtime. There's a lot of genre blending too, which I like. Brian kind of already mentioned that. There's some thrash. There's some.
Well, it's kind of what sludge metal is the result of like 3 other metal genres.
Yeah, but the big thing about sludge is how the instruments sound too. I mean, the bass is so sludgy on this thing.
I mean, they really sound like the closest thing to me as far as like the playing. Obviously, there's a lot of thrash influence. It's really thrash and like stoner or doom metal. Those are the two big things at play here. And then you have a lot of death in the vocals.
But there's some really gothic country too with the more acoustic melodic parts too.
I wouldn't call it country, but I do like I think the gothic comparison should be made because he really does have this. Like, reminds me of Ghost a little bit, his vocal delivery when he's not screaming.
Now, so a lot of the album is majority of it is memorable, which is tough to do with an album with this kind of runtime. But I think there are a few duds, but they're spaced out because, like I said, I'm totally right with you, Brian. The back half does have some gems in it, so I think it makes for an overall good experience. I think it's just the lyrics and the runtime that bring it down for me just a smidge. I think I'm going to go with a light 8 on this thing. I loved it a lot more than I thought I was.
This is my favorite thing you brought to the show so far, Chaz, this season.
Yeah, and I think it's just because...
I was surprised you're kind of low on it.
Yeah.
More than Chumbawamba's Anarchy?
Just a little bit, probably. About the same.
But I think what brings it for me is the playing. I mean, the music on here is awesome. If it was instrumental, I think I would love it even more because But again, the lyrics are there for the experience, and I think they do a really good job. So, I don't know. Really torn on that, but a light 8 overall. What do you guys think?
I think it's pretty awesome, yeah. I don't know. I was going to go a decent 8. I was really surprised. I mean, that's not a world of difference or anything, but I'm a little surprised you were... I thought you'd be super hot on this thing.
Well, it's the lyrics. Again, if I didn't realize how lyrically it goes balls to the walls until I actually sat down and read them, and that was an experience in and of itself. But, yeah. Like I said, it was the same with Shoo Shoo. I get it and I respect it, and it's there for the experience. It's just, is it something that I want to listen to all the time? No. But I think the music elevates the experience to where, like, I probably would put this on again just to hear those fucking riffs.
I'm going to go with a strong 7. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't quite love it. I think it's got some flaws, but despite that, has some very, very strong high points. What about you, Tanner?
All right.
Damn. It's not Apex.
Yeah, it's better than that. It's just a metal album to me. I don't know. I've been to a Guar concert before. I'm really familiar with the world, the aesthetic. Somebody called it, I guess. Yeah, I get it. But I don't know. It's just not the kind of music for me. Not something I'd listen to. I don't hate it by any means. Like if somebody was playing it on the speakers while we were all hanging out or something, I wouldn't be like, turn that shit off or anything. But if
it was Apex Twin, though, you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
So I mean, it's just a 5. It's just a neutral,
yeah,
in the middle thing for me.
Fuck, I really thought I had something here. Next time, Tanner, I'm gonna win.
You did over. With me. Do I not matter, dude? You've been shitting on me all fucking season. The Chipmunks record, your fucking stupid album.
Wow,
dude, you have brought me nothing. The fucking whatever June Core pick you had like a few weeks ago, I've already forgotten about. Dude, help me.
Well, Brian, you like a lot of shit that I don't listen to, so I'm trying.
I can't help you unless you help yourself.
This is just move on. I just want to go away from this. I just want to go talk about N.O.D.
So I know that we've been talking about wanting to get more hip hop on the show. So I recently have been delving into the subgenre of hip hop that originated in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis rap in the 90s, characterized by typically very lo-fi production, as it was a very rough area at the time. And a lot of the artists coming out of that area didn't have the resources to make music that was as crisp as stuff that was happening on the East Coast, or as glamorous as stuff that was happening on the West Coast. Like the majority of albums released in this scene were released solely on handmade cassettes. There are actually a not insignificant amount of albums that simply do not have a cover because they were released on a cassette tape. There was no cover for it. They had the album name written in like a marker or something. And some of those records have stood the test of time and have found new audiences on the internet, as this style of music has shown itself to be fairly influential to modern hip-hop. When you see stuff like cloud rap, or even the triplet flows for trap rap and that style of production. So I chose the self-titled record from N.O.D, which features the production of Tommy Wright III, he's one of the biggest figures in the Memphis rap scene, along with DJ Paul of 3 6 Mafia. Tommy Wright III is all over the place in Memphis. I've listened to a good few records. He will hop on board. If Tommy Wright is doing the production and making the beats, it's like he just creates this otherworldly atmosphere. This album is only 6 songs. It's like 30-something minutes long. Was released in 1996 on cassette. It's very obscure, ridiculously expensive if you manage to find one of the original cassettes. I found it
that goes for about $100. I've seen more than that even, but that is crazy for a cassette. That thing is on a timer. You can play it twice probably. And that's A and then B, and then you're done. You can never play it again.
I think it's fantastic and kind of incredible that this whole scene has been, rediscovered and has just been talked about a lot more in the past decade on the internet. I think that's really cool. It's like music like this, and then you have city pop and all of this stuff that didn't really get acclaim at the time. The biggest artist in Memphis easily is 3 6 Mafia. Yeah. No questions asked. But this one I actually like a bit more. I'll talk about more of my feelings on the record itself, and I'll hand it over to you.
Tanner, go. Talk about it.
I loved it. I did not think I would love it, and then as soon as the first track came on, I was like, oh, this shit is awesome.
Hell yeah.
Walking around my apartment saying, I ain't scared to die.
Dude. It's kind of amazing, honestly. It is actually kind of amazing. This is there are 10 members of this group.
Because everybody worked with everybody else.
Yeah, but then it creates, honestly, y'all might think I'm fucking crazy. This has a Wu-Tang level quality of chemistry, in my eyes, because, and it's not even really the way they bounce off each other. So the way you go verse to verse, each one is distinct. There's not really a point to finding out which individual. One, you can't find lyrics for this thing, so I have no idea who's rapping at any given time. It doesn't really matter, honestly, because it just works so well. The way the verses just go back to back, you can tell when members switch. You can tell the choruses are great. it's so scuzzy and like amazingly lo-fi. I mean, there are like 2 instruments on this thing, but every beat is completely distinct. These guys don't have the benefit of sampling. They don't have the benefit of...
There's no sampling, yeah.
There is? Oh, I wouldn't have even guessed.
In Memphis, and horrorcore as a genre kind of spawned out of this. They would sample these woozy, cold synths, horror movie soundtracks for the string arrangements, and just create this very chilling, dark, nocturnal...
That's crazy to me that they sampled it. I didn't think they could have done it.
They did, yeah. So there's... Well, you can sample stuff with a cassette.
I guess they could have gotten the cassettes. Like, yeah, that's true. I just hadn't thought about it. Well, that's crazy. It sounds amazing, first of all. I just want to get that out of the way. There's literally not a single bad sounding part of this out. I mean, it's 30 minutes, and there's like 6 tracks, and they're all pretty much watertight in terms of instrumental quality. Lyrically, I think you're just getting a lot of gangster rap topics. I'm not, I think it's good. I like it, but doing some digging, like listening a little bit deeper is not really,
because they're nowhere on the internet.
Yeah, so anything you mishear or can't quite understand is just going to be that way. But I don't, it's really not a huge mark against it. It's just kind of a quality of it.
That's just part of the experience. That's part of the experience.
And the thing about it is, like I said, Memphis was a notoriously bad area.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the artists on this record are just rapping about either what they know or a very, I don't know the word for it. Like, they are purposefully trying to, in a similar, not really in a similar vein to Acid Bath, actually, but just trying to be as frightening.
Over the top.
Exactly. But the thing with horrorcore is, rather than be like, I'm at the top, I got all the money, I got the cars, it's like,
I'm going to kill you.
Yes, this horrorcore, like N.O.D, is like, I'm at the top, I will fucking murder you. And it's very, very...
But it feels very real too. Like, I mean, it definitely, yeah.
Real. And the thing is, like, it's lended a bit of validity, but from the fact that they're rapping about their own situation, but they're also, I think there's a lot of characters in Memphis rap where they were just exploring these personas and these ideas. Because it's not like, for example, drill music right now, where members of the scene are actively actually killing each other. Memphis wasn't like that. There was a lot more, it was more of an artistic license, as Brian was talking about with Acid Bath, where they're just trying to explore these atmospheres of making just the most chilling and frightening, to some degree. I think N.O.D is necessarily one of the most frightening acts in the scene, even though the album cover is like cursed.
It's extremely cursed. Yeah.
Super deep fried.
It looks like, I mean, the image, it literally looks like a fucking meme. Like, it literally looks like someone would post that shit like me getting cheese at 3 a.m. or some stupid shit. This is like me and the boys at Kroger at 3 in the morning. Like, this is really what this cover energy has with me. Oh, but yeah, it doesn't sound scary. Honestly, it's just so damn catchy. It's so great. Great hook on the first song.
Beautiful.
Great hook on Fiend in Part 3. The synths add a lot to the album. Damn, it's I don't really know what to say. It's kind of like shocking how good it is, and it's really, honestly, no secret how this sound has become as global as it has, because it's fairly simple. It's not consciously simple. It's just that's what they had, right? So, but they just did so much with so little, and it went such a long way. And the chemistry between all the rappers here, just the verses are, they're just diverse stylistically, maybe not lyrically, but it doesn't really hurt it.
So the first track I thought was definitely like way more on the gangster rap end of things. And then as the second track kind of picked up, it was, still a little bit there. It was like just a smack talk gangster rap song, but it had that like undertone, like the synth thing going on, and it like inspires dread. It's like, no, this is you hear a lot of other rap and it's like, yeah, they're gonna fucking shoot that guy, it's gonna be awesome. But with this, it's like, dude, if you don't shut up, people are gonna die, and it's going to be a terrible thing. But it's like still badass.
Yeah. I like the if that's Tiny Lame, that has like my favorite moment on the whole album where one of the rappers starts shit talking and then it loops him over himself shit talking. That to me is the only part that's like actually kind of scary. It's like, whoa, it's so out there and so kind of left field.
I actually had a really hard laugh during Tiny Lame because during No Fear, the whole the I ain't scared to die. And the hook, the whole hook is I ain't scared to die. Then during Tiny Lame, one of the lines is, N.O.D. ain't scared to die. They already told you in the first song. And it's like, why would you just say it again in the second song?
Yeah, it's so awesome. The end of the album, the last song, the last like 2 minutes is them plugging their next CD. It's like that's that motherfucker.
That's the way
but it's so awesome because it's such a time capsule, you know? Like it really is.
Like it's all over. Like I think I've heard probably 5 to 6.
We already told you on the first song.
Memphis records so far. Woo. And that thing of like the last 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes of the last song being somebody just like, hey, shout out to these people, shout out to these people. You know, this member of the group has an album coming out. This member of the group has an album coming out.
It is kind of charming.
It's very charming. It's awesome. And you get that. And I mean, I'll talk about the last track.
There's 10 of us here. We only had one tape.
It's only so much time to plug shit, dude.
I love it.
It's awesome. I don't know.
It just goes to show how much creativity there was and how much collaboration there was. Because it seems to me like every Memphis group that I've come across is made of this rapper and this producer who also worked on this and this and this and this, and they're coming together to make just a series of tapes, none of which have album covers and all of which are incredibly obscure. And like one of them, the internet has found again and is just blown up to some level. Or
this old stuff blowing up has anything to, and probably does with it. I wonder what order it happened in. Like, did this stuff start influencing mainstream rap and then people went back? Or I wonder if people went back and kind of, you know, just because it's
probably both.
Yeah,
there's
maybe
just so many music being made, it could be either one.
It's just crazy to me how influential this sound really, really is. I mean, it's not really even been that long since it was a thing, honestly, but rap like it has been coming out as like mainstream hits and making millions and billions of dollars even for like 10 years now. You know, it's insane to me. I don't know. It's hard to even comprehend, I feel like, because it's looking at how it originated, you know?
I just love how much, obviously, these guys were just getting inspiration from each other and just going further and further into this incredibly stylized, nothing else sounds like it sound, and seeing how far they could push it and just not hold, like, no holds barred.
Honestly, it being so insular was probably really important for how it became
how it developed. Yeah. And it's
community is really
awesome scene. It's a really, really cool scene. And I know that there's this level of darkness and nihilism and scariness associated with it. However, like, again, that's the aesthetic. And it's also what some of the people there had to deal with because Memphis was just such a rough area. So when you have songs like Fuck the World on N.O.D. saying like, Jesus, the world is just fucked up, that's coming from a place of struggle, like genuine struggle. And I think that part of the level of like, don't mess with us, we are to be feared, is also coming from a place of like, hey, we've struggled, but don't mess with us. Like, it's coming from a place of like, I know it might seem egotistical on its face, the way that a lot of gangster rap does. And I think this is true of a lot of gangster rap as well. It's coming from a place of I had nothing, now I have something.
It's survival.
Which is really cool. It's kind of poignant when you think about it in that way.
Yeah, like during Fuck the World, when it has the horrorcore element of it with that just underlying kind of synth tone, it takes like a narrative that would be in another like gangster rap song again, it's making sound, like the Cowboys kind of style where Old West, everything's cool, shooting each other in the street or whatever. But you hear how it's applied in Fuck the World and the take that they have on it, then it's actually more like, oh, well, maybe, murdering each other in the street isn't a great thing.
Yeah.
You've talked about before, June, like feeling empathetic for people in other time periods. I mean, this is barely 2 decades ago, or like, 96. And this is maybe the only album that when we've talked about it, I've sort of felt that way, even though this is not my experience. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a black man from Memphis, believe it or not. So,
I thought I knew you.
I'm a black woman from Memphis. I still, a human being to another human being, and understanding, how black people have been treated. It kind of is upsetting, and it is kind of like, hey, that connection happens on this album of all albums. You know what I mean? It's really weird. I don't even feel this way about like the Bob Dylan record. Like to them as people, I kind of can just envision them like, in the fucking parking lot, like passing tapes around, trying to create this community. It's kind of a beautiful thing.
And to mention something being beautiful, I know that this album is kind of lo-fi and dark, with some of the synths, and especially on the last track, Fugitives, Tommy Wright's production is downright beautiful. I mean, it's breathtaking, especially on that last track, which is one of the greatest hip-hop songs I've ever heard. That 9-minute just could go on forever.
It just loops, and you've heard the whole song. You've heard the whole instrumental in the first 30 seconds, but it really just, it's just so amazing. And the verses and the rapping here just fits so well over top of it, and it really shouldn't work, because it doesn't actually even it barely sounds like a rap beat, to be honest. It's just so, like you said, hypnotic.
Keys in the last song, like, to me, it sounded like when you score points in a Sega game or something.
I know, yeah. It sounds like I mentioned it, and I saw
said it sounded like a Bowser song or something.
It sounds like the Bowser song on the Super Mario 64 soundtrack, but like turned into a rap song. That's the way this sounds, because they're these cheap synths, the same kind of synths that would be used on video game soundtracks at that time. So it just gives it this whole atmosphere that's just so unique.
Fuck. Stop praising it, damn it.
All right, Chaz, say something stupid.
Tell us why 3 out of 4 people are wrong.
Yeah, I know.
That many people can't be wrong, Chaz.
Look,
it just doesn't happen.
You've opened my eyes about some things. So what I'm about to say is coming from a vacuum of just me enjoying or not enjoying the album.
Because you suck.
He did it.
Got him. I've been bonked.
June's face would kill me.
So I'm just going to say my piece and you all can go from there. But like I said, take what I'm about to say. I'm not critiquing what they had to use. It's just whether or not did I enjoy it. And frankly, I was pretty disappointed. Brian, for the longest time, I never really could see where you were coming from with your critiques of Slint, but now I kind of do. All I would see is nothing but praise for this thing. June hyping it up, seeing the reviews on Rate Your Music hyping it up, the aura around it and the mythos. I was pretty excited. And just after track 1, it's just I'm pretty disappointed all across the board. The lyrics, okay. They're pretty one note, pretty like either about being awesome, which it's gangster rap from 96. That's to be expected. But the biggest flaw with elements of horrorcore used on this thing is that it loses its luster pretty damn quick. A lot of the times when you listen to ICP, huge horrorcore rap group, is that there's only so many times you can say you're gonna murder me before I'm like, okay, it's kind of getting old. And here, it's just pretty much all they rap about, aside from a few moments, as you guys already mentioned. Again, it's hard for me to realize that because there's no lyric sheets anywhere. So I'm just going off what stuck out to me, what I heard. And a lot of it felt pretty one note. It was all seemed pretty par for the course. Flows and cadences, okay. Again, I understand that because they probably could only go with a couple of takes because of what they had. But is it enjoyable?
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that. But it would have a limited amount of takes on this tape.
But
That's crazy.
Is it enjoyable? I don't think so. A lot of lyrics are super slurred. The cadences are super slurred. A lot of their flows are super amateurish. But again, I understand that because it's probably just what they had, but I just don't like it. I don't think it's good. I feel like there's much better rap that came up before this that is super, but it's produced. So again, that's where I am very torn now because I understand that. I never even thought about that going into it. I think the beats are... hold on.
I was surprised you said there... I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to build on a point you said so you can run with it.
Okay.
I thought the rapping sounded like super skillful. Like, I actually thought they were really good rappers. Do you think it was like sloppy?
I thought it was super sloppy. A lot of times they get off the beat. A lot of times their cadences get slurred. They're slurring words. Like, it felt super, like, Bandcampy, honestly. But again, they probably are good rappers, but they were just working with what they had. So they had to go with the first take probably because that's all they had. But listening to it, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just listening to what's being said, and I think it's kind of just really run-of-the-mill and kind of just meh. I think the beats are the best thing about the album, but again, I just think they're okay. Again, but June, you made a great point about they're probably using like video game stuff that is really cheap and everything. But even if something is cheap, or you only have a limited amount of use, you can still be super creative with it. While the beats themselves are super dreamy and eerie and way ahead of their time for 96, they're super fucking repetitive. To the point where it's like, you've heard the first couple seconds, it honestly is like a bad NES song that just loops for 5 seconds. You'd think with something that's so hailed and praised for being ahead of the course, there would be a lot more variety in the songwriting. There really isn't. It is pretty one note and basic and repetitive. It is short. I don't think it slogs per se, but I'm just so let down that I just kind of want it to be done. This was just pretty middle of the road for me. I was expecting a lot more than what I got. And I know that sucks to say, and I feel bad for saying that because you guys made some really good points about the behind the scenes that I never even thought about. Never once came to my mind. Because the lo-fi-ness doesn't bother me. I think it gives it a lot of character. But man, oh man, just everything that you come to a rap album for just feels meh on this project.
You know, we do a lot of like shit posting and stuff. And like, well, you know, obviously bad take, bad opinion. But, you know, I get it. I get where you're coming from. Like 100%. You know, because honestly, when I first listened to it, Chaz, I listened to it like twice and I was like, this is mid as fuck. I really thought that. I really thought that on my first.
Yeah, I was right off the bat like, oh, this is killer.
Really? Yeah, oh, dude. I thought it. See, I sat down. Something changed on that. Like, I was like, third time. I was like, what's because I had like things about it. Something about sitting down again to listen to it and finally just kind of understand what makes each track different and what really makes this thing so fucking special. It just sort of happened for me, you know. But I honestly did think this shit was so fucking mid on my first and second listen. I was like, "Whoa, this thing is crazy overhyped. I can get why people like it, but no way." But on the more, it just endeared itself to me. Really, is what.
That's the thing. It didn't happen to me. 4 listens, and I still just feel like it's pretty middle of the road. I feel like there's just so much better rap that was coming out around the same time that does what this album does better.
I think if you listen to more rap from around this time, you would be able to appreciate how unique this thing is, even in the context of Memphis
I mean, that's
rap.
the thing, Brian.
I think it's unique.
It is unique. It's totally unique. But I think
you just
I think the uniqueness, it's a double-edged sword. The uniqueness is good, but it also kneecaps the thing. I think the fact that it's super lo-fi, and they probably only had to go with a couple takes. Again, it's kind of like a Bandcamp album. You can appreciate that and the charm because I think there's a lot of charisma and chemistry between the group members. But also, does that make for an enjoyable listen? When you're going on Bandcamp, most of the times, probably not. And I think for a lot of people who would have listened to these tapes back in the day, probably thought the same thing. Like, this was Bandcamp for the 90s. Just making cassette tapes and passing them around on the streets, trying to get people to listen to them. I'm sure a lot of people...
We'll never... That's kind of a cool thing to bring up because we'll never know how popular this thing was in the Memphis. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's like the fact that it's blowing up, anything can blow up on the internet. It all happens the same way to the shit on the internet, just to what degree. But I wonder what it was like in like what were the big Memphis scene albums? Because the circuit, it's been so long. And
Mystic Styles by 3 6 Mafia. That's the only one I can think of that had
a great. Is Gravediggaz Memphis? Are they Memphis?
No, they're not Memphis. I don't think. I think they're from Texas, actually. But
shit, yeah.
Kingpin Skinny Pimp had a fairly not quite as lo-fi
That's
recording.
awesome.
He's great. 3-6 Mafia, that's the name. That's the first name that comes up when you think Memphis rap, and they're easily, I think, the most recognizable and well-known, and probably had the most amount of commercial success. This stuff, this wasn't getting played on the radio. Not at all.
That's crazy, because 6 Feet Deep is like a horrorcore release, isn't it? That's crazy to me that that they weren't in the Memphis scene, because it definitely...
No, I think they're from Texas. Let me check.
Yeah, they're not.
Oh, no, they're from New York.
Oh.
They're from Texas.
Gotta love all this Memphis rap that doesn't take place in Memphis. Gotta love it.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Yeah, there's not a lot of notable names that came out.
I feel bad because I'm totally the minority here. That's just how I feel.
Honestly, this is
totally
the one time
somebody not liking this.
Yeah, this is the one time where I totally kind of get it, Chaz. Where I kind of, like every other time you've been wrong, but this time I really think I get it, because I kind of felt the way you did at first. I really did. I was like, oh.
And Brian, I totally get what you mean with Slint, where it's like you feel something so overhyped that you expect a lot more, and what you get just doesn't hit quite right. I
wish I was harder on Slint when we listened to it, from my subjective point of view, because like I still don't much care for it at all.
And I probably won't ever really love this thing, because I just feel like I didn't get what I thought I was going to get.
And I haven't even gone back to Slint. Talking about that record, like I wasn't into it, and I feel like I would have been harder on it now if I listened to it now, right? Mm-hmm. But I haven't even gone back to it. There have been like Jane Cyberry was one I went back to, and I wasn't really digging it, because I was like, maybe I am missing something. Oh yeah, well it's too late. I'm not gonna correct it. But going back, I've gone back to tons of records for the show. Even if whether I've loved them or just sort of didn't get them and wanted to try to recapture it, but I've never ever gone back to Slint because I just don't care.
I can
totally understand if you felt the same way.
So Tanner, do you have any final thoughts on N.O.D?
Tanner, do you have any critiques for it, or do you just love it across the board?
Well, I mean, one of the big issues is just that there are no lyrics available to look at,
which really pisses me off, because you'd think someone would have transcribed it by now. The internet has failed us.
Yeah, and just for that reason, there is quite a bit that I did miss from the album, especially like towards the back end there. I just couldn't pick up on a lot of it. Like even with a lot of rock music, I still have to look at the lyrics and stuff too. So I just missed some on that end, but conceptually, I loved it all the way around and had a great time with it.
What do you give it?
Strong 7.
I'm going to go with a decent to strong 5. Just middle of the road for me.
This is like the lowest Chaz goes. Like this is like the worst thing Chaz could say to you about your album.
We need to find some shit Chaz hates.
Well,
I'm apparently great at that.
Well, see, that's the thing with me. I feel like it is more of a crime to be meh than bad. Because at least with bad, it can be funny. You can get a lot of stuff out of it for how bad it is. With meh, it's like, what the fuck do I say? Everything's just okay. Everything on this album is just okay to me.
You thinking it meh? When I think something's meh, I have like nothing to say. Like I'm a total like what was?
Well, Brian, what were all my critiques? Everything's just okay. Like I have nothing to say either. It's just fuck.
Yeah, I mean, well, you actually talked about you get to me and I'm like,
I'm a better reviewer
dude,
than
I don't care.
I'm a better reviewer than you, so it just.
Yeah, it's true. You have moved past me. It's true. I can't be asked to like listen to something I think is super mid. Like, what do you think about it? And give anything more than like, oh, I heard the fucking thing.
Like, that sure was some sounds coming out.
Yeah, wiggly air. Strong 8. I mean, goddamn, it's like fucking awesome. I don't even like. It's like a miracle pick. This is out with Jane Cyberry. In with N.O.D.
Cyberry.
Don't care. Who cares? I don't go. All of her music's not good now.
You can have both.
This is better. Nope. This is it. This is the new one. The only thing I'm sad about is the only other thing that was released by them is like a CD from like in 2004. That might suck. I
bet it does.
But
it looks so meh. It looks so it looks so 2004. I bet it sucks.
Anyway, I would love to do more Memphis rap in general. And the beauty of it is a lot of the groups are probably like this, where it's like 10 people, one album, boom, next group. We could clear this shit. Let's do some Tommy Wright or something. I think it would actually be awesome to just do that shit, because this was great. I mean, this was great. This is one of the best things that I think I've been shown on the show, because it's got that perfect intersection of like only June knows about it. It's really great, and like I feel like it's like a album that defines the show, and we can talk about it because even though it's getting like some credit after its time, there's no one reviewing it. Like this is, you know, very much like the internet lurkers' favorite rap album. I feel like it deserves to be talked about.
I mean, I can praise all of the behind, like the aesthetic, the mythos around it. It's just,
you could get into Memphis rap. I'm certain you could get into some shit like this.
It just sucks for me because you guys know this. When it comes to rap, it's all about the lyrics for me. And when I can't hear what you're saying, it's like, what the fuck?
I don't think you'd get much out of it if you could hear what they're saying, to be honest. I thought your biggest critique was going to be lyrics, but then it occurred to me that no one knows what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all. Oh.
June, give it a number. Artificially label this thing.
Strong 9. Really good.
So as a so-called internet lurker, this is one of my favorite hip-hop records, like probably top 10. I'm going to give this thing a light 9.
Fuck.
I really love it. I think it's amazing. I think the production especially is just like mind-blowing and hypnotic, and just it's like it's beautiful. Like Fugitives, the closer, it's a beautiful song. Like the keys, the synths. Tommy Wright really has an ear for choosing just every little individual pieces of these songs. Is just so well done. It's just so realized. Like, it's such a distinct sound, and they just fucking nailed it, like, immediately. Like, it's just so unique and stylized and fully just taken to as far as it could go. Like, it's kind of amazing. Like Brian said, like, this is just, it's just an amazing record that, yeah.
Everyone all together, you ready? I ain't scared to die, motherfucker. All at once, okay? On 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. I ain't scared to die. Motherfucker. Did you do the second one, June?
No.
Maybe we should do it again. We only have time for one take, fucking.
We're out of tape.
We're out of tape, yeah.
And that's how the album was made.
That was good. I had a good time doing that part.
All right, next time.
Yeah, I don't have a fucking pick. Actually, I do. All right, next time, you want to talk about hip-hop, it's time. Wu-Tang! We're doing 36 Chambers. This is the beginning of the Wu-Tang journey. We got to start where it all began, inside the 36 Chambers. Whatever that fucking means.
Shackling the masses with the drastic rap tactics.
First off,
yeah, that's a lyric.
Before we continue,
yeah, that's a lyric.
Before we continue, Tanner, thanks for being on the show again, dude.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, bye, Tanner.
See you.
Yeah, here he goes. He's leaving. He's walking out of the studio right now.
Stick around. Stick around. Chaz, what's your pick?
Not good. Probably.
No.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think it'll be fun to talk about. It's a folk rock album that was recorded from 1992 to 2006. It's a very obscure Pennsylvania band called Tin Bird Choir. It's their album from 2012, Old Machines.
What the fuck is this? It has no ratings on Rate Your Music.
I mean, that's pretty much par for the course for Chaz.
How the fuck did you find this?
I will explain, like I always do, next time.
Okay, well, I'm also going to choose a fairly esoteric release. I'm going to go with the self-titled eponymous debut released in 1970 by Beverly Glenn Copeland. This was Unwarranted Music Opinions. Thank you again to Tanner Boyd for talking about some music with us.
He's here.
One of these days, Tanner, I'll get you. I'll get you, Tanner.
I'm June Lindberg. I've been here with Brian Courtney.
I ain't scared to die, motherfucker.
And Chaz Jenkins.
Unwarranted Music Opinions can't be murdered by your busters.
We'll see you all next time.
Tanner, say the N-word.
No.